Hello and welcome. This is Cheryl. Thank you so much for joining me today. Today I've got a very short video for you. I'm going to create a die cut shaped Halloween card using this new Pupkin die set. An absolutely adorable dog in a pumpkin costume, perfect for a very simple but adorable Halloween card. Now, because we only have one die set in this collection, I wanted to create a shaped card, but first I'm going to assemble my little pumpkin. I started with the little basket, and it's got a skull on the front as well as a shadow and the handle on the back. Then I'm going to do a little bit of ink blending on my die cut pieces. I have some carrot cardstock here that I cut the pumpkin costume out of, and I'm using some rusty Hinge distress ink to do a little bit of ink blending on there. The base of my pup is done with, or is die cut with Fawn Cardstock, and I'm doing a little bit of ink blending with some vintage photo distress ink. I'm really light with the ink blending. I don't want to cover the color of the cardstock, but I just want to add a little bit of visual dimension and make it a little bit more interesting. This is a step that you don't necessarily need to do if you don't want to. Sometimes when I'm doing layering die cuts, I will do ink blending, and sometimes I won't. It just depends on my mood and the look that I'm going for. Now, there's some openings for the eyes as well as the nose. There's no actual die to fill that in, so I just take black cardstock scraps and just cut a piece that's a little bit bigger than what I need. I usually do a strip for the eyes. You could do individual pieces as well, or instead if you want. They're really easy just to put on the back. The little nose or the nuzzle for the dog, the opening for the nose is really close to the top. So once I glued it on there, I did use my detail scissors to just trim off the points of that cardstock to make sure that it wasn't going to show. And then I'm ready to assemble the rest of my die cuts. Now, to be honest, I shouldn't have put the nose on the dog quite yet. You'll see that in a minute I'll realize that I need to pop in, or he's holding that little basket with the skull, and I need to pop that underneath there. But the nice thing is I use Barely Art glue in a fine line bottle. It takes just a few moments for it to grab and hold, so it gives you a little bit of wiggle room to move things in place, as well as if you happen to forget pieces like I just did, and I do this somewhat often, it's really easy to just lift that up, add a little bit of glue to your die cut, and then insert it. And I didn't put any glue on the bottom part of the basket because I knew I had to insert this collar piece. So I waited until I inserted the collar and then just added a little squeeze of glue underneath it to attach that. For the base of my card, I'm using a combination of Perfect Touch Arch die set as well as the Essential Arches die set. For the front of the card, I have two different die cuts done with that perfect arch. For the base of the card, for the back of it, I didn't feel I needed the detail from the Perfect Touch. The Perfect Touch just has little kind of V notches all the way around, so it just gives it an extra little detail, but I didn't think that detail was necessary for the inside of the card. It's also not necessary for the focal point that I'll be making in a moment. So I die cut the back of the card with just a regular Essential Arches die, same size as the front of the card. Use my score pal with my Teflon embossing folder to score a mark at the 4.5 inches mark, and then folded it to make sure that I had a good hinge on there, and use my glue to glue the front or the top part of that. Making sure to not put glue right on that fold line. I want to make sure that that glue doesn't ooze past that fold line. Then I glued on that carrot mat, which was done with the Perfect Touches Arch die, the size smaller. And then I'd chosen an arch die to do the focal point. Typically when I do embossing, I will emboss first and then trim down my cardstock later. But because this is done out of an arch shape, not possible to do that later because it's going to flatten all of that embossing. So I did my die cutting first, choosing one of the regular Essential Arches die sets that was smaller than the carrot mat that I had on the front of my card. Use that embossing folder to emboss it, and then I'm just using some crushed olive green distress ink for the bottom, a little bit of that rusty Hinge. That's the one that I used for ink blending around the pumpkin's costume, and then a little bit of Villainous potion on the top. I love this combination for Halloween. It's just fun to me. I don't love the scary, gory stuff about Halloween, but I love the cutesy stuff. So I like this combination. I find it just fun for Halloween. So I'll often use that for Halloween cards. I added just a little bit of the vintage photo around the outside, mainly because it coordinated with the puppy, as well as the fact that that oak forest background, it's kind of woodsy. So I thought it looked good and it framed it in nicely. But that's another step that you can eliminate if you don't want that darkening around the edges. Once I glued that to the front of the card, I added my little pup die cut, and it was at that point that I decided that I needed a sentiment. I had forgotten to add a sentiment, or forgotten to think about a sentiment. So I took the Happy Halloween sentiment from the Bewitched die set, trimmed it or die cut it in Carrot cardstock for the shadow, and Acorn Cardstock for the words. Acorn Cardstock is the same color that I used to die cut the nose of the dog, so it coordinates with that. Now, if you want the sentiment to go on the front of the card, I would definitely put the pup a little bit higher, and definitely I would have them all die cut together and assemble at the same time. However, I wanted this sentiment just to go on the inside. So I'm gluing them together. I'm going to let that glue sit for just a few moments, and then I will add it to the inside of the card. And here's, if you wanted to put it on the front, it'll fit on the front. That pup doesn't take up so much room that you can't do that. I have it a little bit too low to add it to the front though, so I wouldn't do it with the positioning that that die cut is in now. But again, it works perfectly for the inside of the card as well. Happy Halloween or a Halloween or fall themed stamp would also work for this as well, but I definitely would do that before assembling the card base. It'll just be a little bit easier. To add just a touch more texture to the front of the card, I'm using some Glossy Accents for the pup's eyes and nose, and then I'll let that sit and dry. It just adds a little bit of gloss as well as shine to it, and it gives it something that just catches the light when you tilt it. Now there's a lot of texture in both the layers on the card as well as that embossed background and the layered die cut to create Pupkin, but that, in my opinion, the Glossy Accents for the eyes and nose just really finish it off, and it just creates such an adorable Halloween or even fall themed card. I absolutely love this die set. I think it's just the most adorable thing ever. And I hope you enjoyed watching along. I really appreciate all the time that you spend with me. I hope you have a fantastic day.